and regulation. And SB5 is mostly about tax issues and some about regulations in in union organizing. So people will walk, and we need to hold this state together. And Melanie, I'll back up. In healthcare, you mentioned about the latest commercial. I just saw that, I think, today, first time, and talking about the baby. Well, saying the staffing levels, they won't be able to determine staffing levels. Well, again, the state does not employ very many healthcare workers or government. The only state workers you might see would be in some of the mental institutions, and there's only 3 or 4 county-owned hospitals left, Metro Hospital up in Cleveland. So this would affect very, very few people. And then in addition to that, there are accrediting agencies, one that I surveyed for, that go in and tell the hospitals, if you're going to be open, if you're going to have a license to provide patient care, these are the staffing levels you will have. So, maybe the unions can ask for additional, but there are other regulations in place that establish minimum staffing levels. So it doesn't even have to come up in a union contract. So once again, the ads that are coming out there are misleading. I did mention this real quick to my group. One thing was missed in the bio. I'm president of the Akron Tea Party, and speaking with our group last night, you're not going to learn about SB5, Issue 2 in 15-second sound clips. It just will not happen. Either for or against, it's not going to happen because the message trying to get out there is just quick, trying to get to the uninformed voter to get a reaction and hope they'll vote. That's no way to learn about this bill.
Okay, thank you very much. Now that everybody has the document, let me quickly run through what I think are the key points, and I'm going to kind of open up the aperture a bit and try to kind of frame the issue, and then let's get to Q&A, because that's, again, I know you guys have probably lots of questions. So the first chart there that tells state government spends too much, what that shows you is the general revenue fund expenditures for the state budget from 1990 through 2013, which means it's the 2 years of the budget that was just passed, projected forward, what they expect to spend. And what that shows you is the general revenue fund expenditures have gone up since 1990 by 148%. After you adjust for inflation, that's 44%. So on average, about 2% more than inflation every single year. I'll remind you, most of that occurred under Republican control. So the idea that spending is somehow a left or a Democrat problem is actually not true. In many cases, Republicans and conservatives are just as bad at spending money as the other side. So it really is a bipartisan effort to spend money. The next slide down, the gold-plated compensation slide, what that shows you is we took all the data from the last 8 to 10 years in the private sector in Ohio as well as in the state government, actual data, and we did a trend analysis to show where would it go if the trends from the last decade applied to the next 3 decades. And what that shows you is that within 30 years, a state worker essentially will cost twice as much as their private sector peer here in Ohio. Again, as Seth talked about, that's just a math problem. You can't have that kind of cost differentials and have a healthy state. If you flip it then to look at the local level, that chart with the state of Ohio on it, that's mostly red, and most of you know red when it comes to numbers is a bad thing. Those numbers come from the Ohio Department of Education, from the 5-year projections that every school district has to submit to ODE. That is from the October data. The reason why October is important is because what you often hear in this kind of divisive issue is, oh, it's because of Governor Kasich and the budget and the cuts to local governments. That's why you're seeing kind of levy increases or all those types of things. And that's just not true. I mean, certainly the cuts that the budget made are making this picture worse, but this was the picture as of October 2010, before there was a Governor Kasich or a state budget. And what that shows you is that we have a massive spending problem in our local governments, highlighted by the school districts. This data shows you that by 2015, the school districts are projecting an aggregate deficit across the state of Ohio of $7.6 billion. At that time, they project all revenue, 96% of all revenue will go to compensation packages. So you can cut art and music, you can buy cheap toilet paper from China, and do all other kind of cost-saving measures. If you don't tackle compensation packages, you will have to do one of two things, which is raise taxes by about $8 billion, or talk about staffing levels. You're going to have to essentially cut young teachers, last in, first out concept in order to, or janitors or whomever is on the cutting block if the taxpayers don't decide they're going to approve those levies. So this compensation package problem is a huge issue, especially at the local level, and that's something that's going to have to be solved. One of the reasons that's causing this is if you look at that next chart and you see how the private sector is way down, that shows you the percentages. Over the last 11 years, we've lost about 10% of the private sector jobs in Ohio. At the same time, we lost about 1% of the government jobs in Ohio. So why I tell you that is because in real numbers, what that means is this. Today, there are about 500,000 fewer net private sector workers in the state of Ohio who can then generate revenue that helps us provide necessary government services. At the same time, there are about the same number, 9,000 fewer, government jobs in the state of Ohio. So you've got about the same size government, but because of the greater than inflation package increases, they cost a whole lot more than they did 11 years ago. And again, all this data is available. You can find it in the BLS or any type of other government source. But the cost is much more expensive. So what you've got is 500,000 fewer private sector workers who are trying to bear the cost of a same size government with a higher cost structure. Again, as Seth noted, that's a math problem. And you can only solve that math problem by raising taxes, cutting staffing levels, so young firefighters, young police officers, young teachers, young state workers or county workers have to get cut, and programs get cut unless you tackle this compensation package, which at the local level, compensation costs are really the huge driver of budgets, which isn't a surprise. They're service-oriented positions, but nonetheless, to kind of remove that or think that somehow the current system, which created this crisis, is going to somehow alleviate the crisis is a bit naive, but we can talk about that later. If you flip to the very last chart in this document, I've taken those big numbers, 10%, 1%, and put them into the 10 industry sectors that the Bureau of Labor Statistics tracks. So this is the latest numbers, and you can look for yourself. We track from January 1990 to January 2000 to January of 2010, and then to last month, which is the latest numbers we have in the state of Ohio. And just to put a further point onto this, today in Ohio, we have about 220,000 more private sector jobs than we did 21 years ago. For 11.5, 11.7 million people, that's not a whole lot of jobs. It's about 6 to 7% growth over that entire period of time. Again, you can be a huge proponent of big government, or you could say be a big proponent of very attractive and generous packages for public sector workers, but you cannot have a vibrant government if you don't first have a vibrant private sector. We don't have a vibrant private sector in the state of Ohio, and we have not had one for a long time. And we can debate what we do to solve that private sector problem, but that private sector problem creates a government problem because that cost structure is something that again becomes unaffordable under the current kind of who's paying for that. Again, half a million fewer private sector workers. On top of that, did Stark County get a triennial update on your property values this year? Did you get them? Did your auditor do your kind of, here's how much your property is now worth every 3 or 6 years? You do the triennial review. Did you get it? Yes, no, you don't know yet? Yeah. You did? Okay. I assume like every other county, 50% of all Ohio counties are getting the triennial updates this year. And every single one of them, the net is a net loss for property owners. So our properties are all worth less. We lost 5.1% of our property value over the last 3 years, which means we've lost equity. We're not underwater, thankfully, but we've lost equity. But at the same time, our school wants us to pay increase our levies by about 10% or about 9% of our property. So they want my taxes to go up 9% at a time where my property is now worth less. That is the case all over Ohio for everybody, including folks in Stark County. So again, it's simply just a math problem, right? You just can't keep saying we need more, without really trying to kind of address the issue in a meaningful, structural way. And I think that's kind of where we really need to focus our time and attention to say, look, wouldn't it be great if we all made more money? And who wouldn't want to make more money? And I think as Seth said, he's absolutely right. You can't pay, especially some of the folks that are putting their lives on the line, or teachers that are in really tough environments, enough money to do what they do. But lots of us put lots of time in and have difficult jobs, and you know, whether you're a janitor in the private sector, or that's like that siren, that's great, or elsewhere. You know, everyone's working hard these days and facing losses, and it's simply a matter of saying we just can't keep going on the trajectory we're going, or we're going to drive more companies out of Ohio and more jobs. Ohio has lost half of its Fortune 500 company over the last decade. We can't continue that, and they're not going overseas, by the way. Yes, some of the jobs are going overseas. That's always the case. We live in a global environment. But as the Toledo Blade found, 57% of jobs did not go overseas. They went south, as in south of the United States and west. So we've got a real problem we've got to address. If we continue to have the 7th highest tax burden in the country, the local level, which Ohio does, we're just going to simply chase more and more companies away and have a smaller tax base to continue to pay those cost structures, and then we're going to have real problems in terms of staffing levels.
Madam, sorry to each of you for reaching over everybody. We're going to do this tonight because we have one microphone. And in the way of logistical announcements, just one other thing. I understand the school, our friends here at the school are trying to turn the lights up here. I apologize, it's so dark. But they haven't quite gotten that done yet. So we're working on it apparently, and we hope they do before the end of the night. Matt, I want to just expand. The fact that you always throw out that strikes me the most is the school's own projections that show 96% of their general revenue funds in 4 years will be built up or eaten up by salary and pensions, et cetera. Maybe you can give us some other examples of how the employee costs, the personnel costs are playing, kind of driving this financial burden that local governments are facing. Maybe you can expand on that some.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you guys read the newspapers, you see these. You know, you mentioned Cincinnati, that the $93 million in unpaid leave liabilities. You know, sick leave was really something that was there in case you're sick. It wasn't intended to be some kind of windfall provision that you could bank for 30 years and then cash out. And you know, there were 10 folks, 10 fire and police officers that cashed out for an average of $200,000 or above. One gentleman cashed out and got $430,000 payout. And you just can't have those kinds of liabilities and not expect to go broke. Columbus had, I think, it was 77 or 73 million in liabilities in terms of the unpaid sick leave issue. We have teachers, and you know, Avon School District up in Cleveland. You know, during the whole height of this stuff, teachers took professional leave to go down to a campaign rally, and so taxpayers got stuck paying that cost, but also had to bring a substitute in to actually be in the classroom that day. So got hit twice there. City of Dayton has a birthday benefit that is, you know, you get all the holidays you always get paid for, but in addition, on your birthday, you get paid another bonus. We've got the structures, as you may or may not know. Most people don't realize there's 3 bites at the apple in terms of the way contracts tend to work. You get your negotiated increase, 2%, 3%, 1%, whatever it might be. And then you get the step increases, which are the grids that we have here in Ohio. And then in some cases, there's a third piece, which is longevity, which everyone confuses with step. It's not step, it's different than step. So for example, state workers in Ohio, when they hit year 5, they get a 2.5% bonus in their paycheck. And it goes up 0.5% every year to year 20. So in year 20, they get a 10% bonus just for sticking around the state for 20 years. And in addition to a step increase, in addition to their negotiated salary increase. So again, there's all these provisions in there. There's of course the pension pickup, which, you know, I think that's an overstated issue in Ohio. You know, everyone thinks everybody gets it, and it's actually not the case. This is a case where, frankly, most of the time what we're seeing is it's the administrators getting the pension pickup, not the teachers. Fire and police tend to get some of that pension pickup, which is, for those who don't know, under this Ohio statutory law, we taxpayers have a contribution we make to the pension on behalf of employees. So for higher ed, K-12, state workers, it's 14% of their paycheck a year we put into the pension. For police, it's 19.5%, and for fire, it's 24%. They're supposed to then put 10% in all those categories of their salary. 10% of it goes into the pension fund. In some cases, we pick up the 10% as well. So we're paying anywhere from 24% to 34% in the case of firefighters, 100% of the pension cost. Again, you know, that's not as widespread as folks like to say it is, but it's there, and administrators here in the school districts tend to get that, and in some cases superintendents get the pickup of the pickup, which is not only do they get our employer share, we pick up their employee share, but we also then pick up the portion where they get to use